Okay, so let's get the show on the road. So I'm Brad Vander Zanden. Hopefully you are here for Programming Languages and Systems. It's a fun course, fair amount of programming. You'll be exposed to Java for the first time, well, probably for the first time in this curriculum. You may have used it before in work or the like, but we do go fairly rapidly over Java, and it fortunately is a simplified version of C++. So the syntax is very similar, especially for the control structure. So even though we go rapidly, hopefully that won't be a problem. You're also going to be exposed to Python in this course and to the functional programming language scheme, which is in the Lisp family. Also, we're going to cover event-based programming, which is what is associated with graphical user interfaces, and concurrent programming using Java. Where also the event-based programming will be in Java. For those of you who are taking 360, you may find it interesting, the overlap toward the end of the course, because in 360, you'll also be doing concurrency at about the same time that we do concurrency here. I think you will find that concurrency in Java is a lot nicer than concurrency in C, but you'll be able to draw your own conclusions. Also in this course, in addition, so the survey of programming languages and systems. So the survey of languages is Java, Python, and Scheme, but we also cover some more advanced let's see, language concepts that you may or may not have seen before. So we go over exceptions. Hopefully you can see that up there. Modules and generics, which are templates in C++. So you've probably used templates in C++. You've taken Dr. Greger's courses or Dr. Emmerich's courses. You may have dealt with writing templates. True? Okay. You've taken Dr. Plank's courses. You probably haven't. So modules, you have probably seen namespaces, might have seen something called friends in C++, you might not have. If you haven't, don't worry, that's the point of this course, is to go into some of these more advanced language features in C++ and Java that you may not have seen before. Same thing with exception handling. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the try, catch, throw mechanism that C++ has, but we'll be covering that. Then we also cover some implementation issues, so garbage collection, how virtual methods get implemented. Also under programming language design, I should have also have included polymorphism, which is the ability for the same function to do this. For example, a draw function in graphical interfaces will do the same thing, which is draw a shape, but it will do it differently depending on what class it's associated with. If it's associated with a rectangle, it will draw a rectangle. If it's associated with a circle, it will draw a circle. We call such a function a polymorphic function because a different version of it executes depending on what class or what object it's associated with. So we'll talk about that and inheritance. So those are some other things under programming language design. So this is kind of a potpourri of things. It's meant to not make you a master of anything, but at least a good practitioner of these different things. And then there's you can get into more detail, like if you take Dr. Wong's graphical programming classes, then you'll get more experience with graphical user interfaces. There are parallel programming courses in the electives that give you more experience with concurrency. So this is kind of like a gateway that gives you some basic proficiency. And then in the electives, you're free to go and get a deeper dive with some of them. So, okay. So I've already sent out an announcement, but you're free to attend in person based on who's here today. Anyone who wants to come, whether you're for the Tuesday or the Thursday section, feel free to show up. Obviously, I'm simulcasting in Zoom, and I also am recording the lectures. I will post them online, so that's a third way you can do it. We'll figure out about the exams when the time comes. I haven't given a lot of thought to that, so we'll figure that out when we get to it. Right now, the textbook, VolShops is working on getting you a link directly to it in Canvas. You can access the textbook right now through the assignments and the pre-class activities. So, for example, if you go to the pre-class for January 21st, you can access the reassigned readings for that day. However, you should be able to have a link that will allow you to access the book and look at any section you want. That's something that VolShops is looking into. We don't have it up yet for you. Hopefully by Tuesday we will. I'll post on Canvas announcements when I hear something. Okay. So that was an introduction to the course. What I want to do the rest of today is get rid of this a second. This should stop that annoying beeping. Maybe. Good. Sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to stop the mail system from beeping on my computer every time a mail message comes in. Okay, so the rest of the class, what I want to do is some housekeeping, and then I actually want to plunge into Java, taking a first look at it. So the course website is all important. And so let me see it, and I will then write it here. So go to web.eec.utk.edu/tilde/cs365. That is the website for the course. And it gives you the basic information. So I'm going to clear this annotation. So it gives you information about the course. Just a moment. Gives you information about the course, the lecture notes, your homework assignments, plagiarism policy, and the useful guide to common Java errors, which you might find useful as you start the course. So the course information, my office hours, actually they're Tuesday 4:15 to 5:15. I'll get that modified. Monday 11 to 12. On Zoom, same link that we're using for this class. Okay, so I'll be there at those times. TAs, they're still a little bit in flux, so stay tuned for that. I probably will be the person answering most of your questions, the TAs will probably do most of the grading. Probably will have the TAs post an office hour so that you can ask questions about the grading, but it looks like they're going to be pretty busy. It looks like we're sharing them basically with another course. So once I have that TA information, I will get it posted. Let's see. If you come to class, everyone's wearing a mask, that's good. Please over your mouth and nose. I'm not doing it for political reasons, doing it to protect my health. That's why I'm here. At any rate, please wear masks. The textbook is an ebook. I like Zybooks. I always get mixed reviews from students, but primarily they're positive. So Zybooks are an interactive textbook. First of all, they're short and snappy. Most textbooks are long and verbose. Jan21 is pretty much right to the point. Now, it may not have as many examples as other textbooks, but I still think they do a good job. I like the interactive figures. I like the fact that they make you work activities as you go through the material, because that kind of active learning has been shown to increase your retention of material. So I assign pre-class participation activities from the book for that reason, because I want you to read the book before you get to class. Oftentimes in class, I have you do some interactive stuff. I'm not always lecturing, so the participation activities make sure that you've done some reading and are somewhat familiar with the material. And the participation activities, they're multiple choice, they're matching, they may be simple, very simple programming problems where you write a line or two of code. If you miss them, you can correct them. There's no reason not to get 100% on them. Okay, so they do let you fall back. Now, with Java and with Python, you often may want to go to the reference sites. When we get to Python, I'll show you that. For Java, we'll be using version 1.8. Why is that? Because that's what's on the Hydra machines. So I know that's not the latest version of Java, but it's the one that we're going to be running when we run your programs and grade them, we're going to run them on the Hydra machine. So if you use a feature from Java 1.10, it may not be supported in 1.8. So please limit yourself to 1.8. So my link is to the 1.8 documentation. So you go to that website, it has a nice description of each class in Java and all of its methods, and I make use of it a lot because it's hard to memorize everything in Java. And then Oracle also has a nice set of tutorials that you can use to supplement the textbook if you think the textbook is not going into enough detail. All important is, how do you determine your grade? So I do assign 5% to the pre-class activities to give you an incentive to do them. Then there are after-class quizzes that are due immediately before the next class. So on Tuesday, they're due Thursday. For a class like today, they'd be due the next Tuesday. There is no quiz today. They start on Tuesday. Okay? And the reason for those quizzes, they're short, they're 20 minutes, is to give you is to force you to rehearse the material within 48 hours of seeing it. Now, I know the Thursday quizzes mean it's within 120 hours, but basically the idea is to force you to rehearse that material. Again, research shows that if you rehearse the material shortly after it's presented, you're more likely to retain it than if you wait, say, for a week or more when you're doing your homework. So 10% to the quizzes. I drop 3 of them. I don't let you make them up. The reason is I would be inundated. There's about 70 people in this class. I would be inundated with requests to extend, to make them up. Instead, I just dropped 3 of them, okay? So if you miss one, no big deal, but don't ask for an extension or a makeup because I won't give it. The homework assignments, they were 35% of the grade, midterm and final 25% each. And like I said, I will figure out how we will be conducting the midterm and the final. The midterm, however, is Tuesday, March 2nd. So that's a date to circle on your calendars. Let's see, homework assignments. You may submit the homework assignments up to 2 days late, 10% penalty for each day that they are late. Be careful on the submission deadlines. So when you see the homework assignments, you see due Wednesday, February 3rd, and you think, I can wait till Wednesday, February 3rd. No, they're effectively due the night before. I make them due at 6 a.m. in the morning. Why is that? Because many of you are night owls and you like to work late. And I've gotten good feedback about making them due at 6 a.m. I know that seems like an odd deadline, but a lot of students have told me how much they like it. But don't get sucked into then thinking, oh, I can wait until Wednesday, February 3rd to do it. It's effectively the previous night that it's due. So it's really due Tuesday, February 2nd, effectively. So don't get tripped up by that. Okay, generally, I try to have a grading guide so you can see what, how the point values for the homework assignments. The homework assignments are submitted using Canvas. So while the homework assignments themselves are found on the website, you submit them using Canvas. Basically, the plagiarism policy, you work on your own, you don't work with someone else, you don't submit stuff you find on the internet or something that your friend gave you. It has to be your own work. And I know I've given these homework assignments before. It has to be your work, not my work. So lecture notes. So I don't give a day, but I give the number of days associated with each one. So for example, today is the course in Java Introduction. Then next week, 2 days on Java Basics. So generally, I'll tell you, okay, this is what we're covering next. Then out of the Zybook, I give what sections you should read, and you need to do those participation activities, and you find those in Canvas. So once you go and you do those participation activities through Canvas. I also have my own notes that supplement the books notes, which you know, take it or leave it as you wish. And then I tape my lectures and I upload them. So there's always a lecture here. It's from a previous semester. After I give the lecture and tape it and upload it, it becomes this semester's lecture. So you're always free to pre-look at a lecture if you want. But I update it as soon as possible with the lecture from that day. Let's see. So, yep. Okay. Then there's example code. So there's sometimes when you're doing the homework assignments and either my notes or the homework assignment will point you to this example code, because the best way to learn often is to look at an example program and copy code from an example program. So this is, as I said, generally I'll cross-reference either from the notes or the homework assignment onto this page. So that is it for that. Then, so for Canvas is where all the submissions are going to take place. And, thought I had the online and I don't. I did. So you'll find the submission links for the homework. I haven't updated all of them, only the first homework is, but submission links for the homework. As the solutions, I post solutions, so those will eventually become available. Here are the quizzes. Don't worry, there's not one today, but starting next Tuesday, there are quizzes for you to do. Don't worry about attendance, not taking it this semester. Then the pre-class activities. So in order to do the assigned pre-class activities, just click through on the appropriate link. So there's actually the pre-class one for today is not due until Tuesday, but you actually have 2 assignments for Tuesday. This one, even though it says January 28th, I have to fix the date. It actually will be due on the 26th. So you actually have 2 pre-class assignments to do before next Tuesday. And that is it. So kind of a checklist of things to do before each class. So what I'd say is pre-class checklist. Okay, go to Canvas and do the pre-class activity. And then 2, also go to Canvas and take the quiz, which should only be about 20 minutes. So try to do those 2 things before each class. You should be in good shape. Any questions about any of that? I think we went over grading, went over homework assignments, pre-class activities, the quizzes, where to find the lecture notes, where to find me. They said TAs, we will post that information and we'll try to get you a link to the textbook as soon as possible. Last thing, discussion board for this class is a little bit up in the air. So most of you are probably used to using Piazza. That is, they're now charging a site license and the department's trying to figure out what to do. Whether to go with Piazza. There's another one used by the Haslam School called Yellowdig. Anyone familiar with Yellowdig? So that's a second option. And a third option is Canvas discussion boards. So basically until we get some clarification from the department, if you have questions, please use the Canvas discussion boards, okay? And hopefully we'll get that resolved pretty quickly. So go back here to the, so feel free to email me, but I prefer you just, it's personal things like I need to miss an exam or I'm sick and I can't do something. But if you have a question about the homework assignment or schedule or the like, please post it to the discussion board. And the reason is if you have that question, probably 10 other people have that question. Now, I'd prefer to answer it once. And I'd prefer to give a consistent answer. Secondly, sometimes the TAs will answer. and it's good if we're all on the same page. And we're all on the same page if you post it to a discussion board. But if one of you sends me the question, another one sends the TA the question, and I give you a different answer than the TA, that's a problem. But if you're going through the discussion board, then you get a consistent answer. Plus, sometimes some of your friends or fellow classmates can answer the question too. Okay, please don't post your private code. Okay, because that obviously some other folks might copy it in that case. So my impression is you cannot make a private posting to Canvas discussion boards, correct? Does anyone know? I've heard through the grapevine you can only do public. That would be a problem with posting code. So Piazza allows private posts. So like I said, first homework assignment you don't have to worry about for at least a week and a half, so, or at least a week. So at least we don't have to, we should have the discussion board issues nailed down by that time.
We could send you we could send you a message on Canvas if you preferred that for private code. But that,
that was a good, someone had a good point. Actually, you could send me a private message on Canvas, but it's just, in that case, just send me an email because it'll be more direct. So yeah, please, actually, for the time being, until we have a discussion board, if you have to send me code, just send it to my email address here and attach it.
Dr. Van der Zandt and I actually had an idea for how to set up a free discussion board. For one of our cryptography classes, we use Slack, and that actually did allow for both public posting and for private posting of code or messages to both either professors or TAs.
Okay, so go ahead.
Well, I said I believe it's also free.
Okay, so the suggestion was we might also try Slack as a discussion board. The person said that in one of the cryptography courses they're using Slack. So that's something else I'll look into. Hopefully I'll have something by Tuesday. I'll figure something out by Tuesday. Thanks for the suggestion. Okay, other questions? Okay, okay, interesting. Okay, other questions? Okay.
I had a question about labs. I had a question about labs. Homeworks. Will they be written, or at least will the write-ups be written kind of like a Planck write-up, or?
Okay, so the question is, for the homework assignments, will the write-ups be written like a Planck write-up? The answer is no. So first of all, the programming problems in this course generally are smaller because you're learning the language again, you're not as familiar with it. The second thing is we're often comparing and contrasting stuff. So it'll be like, write this code in C, then write it in C++, and then write it in Java. And I don't want you to have to write enormous programs in 3 different languages. So the programs tend to be a lot, I would say, generally simpler. In the second homework assignment, there will be one that I know is tough. But Dr. Planck uses script programming. He also tends to be fairly detailed in his specifications and how he wants you to do it. I tend to be not as detailed in my specifications.
Okay, thanks.
Are the so the page I'm seeing, all of the links are available for the write-ups. Are these set in stone? Are these the ones we'll be using for the duration of the course?
The only one that's not set in stone is homework 7. So, that one is the wrong assignment right now. So the other ones are set in stone, just not awesome. 7. Okay, I figured I could get away with because it's so far in the future. but I will get homework 7 fixed. It's going to be a graphical user interface homework assignment. So the question was for those here, all the links are currently, you can click through and see them. And the question was, are they set in stone? And the answer is they're all set in stone except for homework 7. Homework 7 is not the right assignment. I switched it. So don't do the current one. I'll let you know when that one's updated. Other questions? Okay.
Attendance isn't mandatory, is it? It's just show up or watch the video whenever you can.
Yep, attendance is not mandatory. You can take it, you can show up in class, you can take it through the simulcast, or you can watch it offline. At some point, the university is going to require me to take attendance, and I'll probably as a proxy, do it. I may do it based on your first participation activity. I'll probably do it attendance that way. So, and that's just for university purposes. The university does it for financial reasons. They want to make sure that you showed up so that that your scholarship money, it has something to do with your scholarship money. Other questions? Please speak up. I'm not looking at the chat feature. I can't multitask that way. So if you're asking a question on the chat feature, you're just going to have to suck it up and ask me the question.
I know we've been asking a lot of questions, Dr. Van, but I promise this is the last one. So I'm one of the few people who's already gotten both rounds of the coronavirus vaccine. Does someone, like, if I decided to show up on campus, do I still have to wear a mask?
Yes, because not everyone else knows that you have it. I'm sorry, but it kind of just is a comfort thing.
Well, too bad for them, I guess. I'm kidding.
Sorry. But you're fortunate. I would like to get that vaccine too. Okay. Other questions? Okay. In that case, what I would like to do is actually get us started on Java. And I think the easiest thing to do is to actually first just show you a sample program, and you can see how it looks different than a C++ program and how it looks the same. This is odd. I would not. Oh. There we go. Okay, the generic Hello World program. Come on. There we go. Okay, so here's a generic Hello World program. And you can probably see some similarities with C and C++. So you declare your main procedure as main, but you'll see a lot of differences. So first of all, no function can exist outside of a class in Java. So you'll notice I have this class called Hello World. And inside of it, I have a method declared as main, and you need exactly this function prototype. So you declare main as static, public, void, main. The static says that it is a class method as opposed to an instance method. And what that means is it does not get a this pointer. So there's no, when you call main, it will not have a pointer to an object. So you cannot access any instance variables in a static method except those that are declared static. Main also takes exactly one argument, which is an array of arguments declared as strings with a capital S. In Java, you can query for the length of an array, so there is no argc. This is in effect like argv in C++. Unlike C++, the first argument, command line argument, appears at argument 0. Okay, if this were C++, what would argument 0 be? The name of the program. The Java designers figured, you probably know what class you're in. So why are we wasting memory on the name of the class? So your command line arguments will start at index 0. Now, the easiest way to have written this would be to have simply put this print statement right here. But right from the get-go, I want to show you the style of programming that is recommended when you program in Java. And that is, don't put code into main, but instead call the constructor and put all of your code that you want to execute in the constructor. I'll show you why in a moment. Okay, but this is generally the way you see Java code written. If you see IDEs like NetBeans or Eclipse, typically this is how they will, when you create a class, this is typically how you'll see the template put or written. You'll see a main provided for you with a constructor call, and then you're expected to put your code in the constructor. So the IDEs that you're likely to find do it this way too. Okay, declare the constructor public, otherwise you'll get an error message from the compiler. And the print statement, this is print line, so Java makes it a little hard. It's clunky. It's a bit clunky, but Java does now have formatted output. Get to that in a moment, but at any rate, this is just print line is printing a string. System is the name of a system-wide class. Out is an object that is connected to a printing mechanism. So in this case, to the console. So out is standard out, and then print line prints it. Rather verbose, but questions about it? Yes. Good point. I've never, we'll find out. Just a sec. Let me first run it. Okay, this one. So to compile at the command line, so first of all, there's a naming convention. The name of the file is the name of the class. Exactly. Java compiler has its own make feature. That makefile feature depends on your naming the file the same. Does anyone notice here? Actually, I have not exactly noticed. Actually, it's low capital. Okay, and then the .java is the extension you use. So you compile it, and it creates a .class file. So it does not compile it into machine language. Instead, it compiles it into what are called bytecodes. which is a lot like assembly language. Those bytecodes are then fed to a virtual machine. So if you want to run it, if I tried to run hello world.class, I would get permission denied because it's not an executable file. You have to invoke a virtual machine, in this case Java, and then give it the name of the class that has main. There's no .class extension, that's assumed. You just give it the name of the class that contains main, and it runs it. So the virtual machine, so Java invokes, this command invokes a virtual machine. And as you can see, this one's running version 1.8. Actually, this is on my computer, but we're also running 1.8 on the Hydras. And you can see it's running the Java SE runtime environment. So it feeds these bytecodes into the virtual machine, and the virtual machine executes those bytecodes. So effectively, it's an interpreter. And therefore, Java programs tend to run a bit more slowly than C++ programs because of the interpreter. But notice you see this, Java hotspot, 64-bit server. What that means is that actually the virtual machine is doing dynamic compilation. It is looking at the hotspots in your program, like for loops, and it's compiling them into machine code on the fly. And it's patching that code into the bytecodes that it has read. The bytecode file itself is unchanged. The .class file is unchanged, but at runtime, it is compiling the bytecodes. Okay, and hotspot is Oracle's trademark name for it, hence TM. But the hotspot refers to it only compiles the so-called hotspots in your program. If you have an if then else and the else is never getting executed, the hotspot compiler won't compile. It will continue to execute bytecodes perhaps. Okay, there's another term that you will hear called just-in-time compiler, which is effectively what the hotspot compiler is. So you'll often hear about JIT compilers. Okay, these are just in time. It's the same idea as the hotspot compilers and they're also in the Java virtual machine. So they're compiling the bytecodes and they're compiling them into machine language. Now, the latest hotspot compilers actually perform comparably to C++. But it is hard when you don't have access to the original source code to compile as effectively as you do if you have the original source code. So if you just compiled a C++ program and you ran the just-in-time compiler for a Java program, the C compiler would generally do better because it would be compiling off the source code, whereas the Java compiler would be compiling off the bytecodes. It's harder to compile assembly language efficiently. But these hotspot compilers are a different beast because they dynamically monitor the execution and they can see where it's slow and then they can go in and optimize it there. And so the fact that they're doing it at runtime, which is something the C++ compilers never do, they just compile and then run, these hotspot compilers can beat the performance of the C++ compilers. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to draw a distinction. Just-in-time compilers versus hotspot compilers. Okay, these can be more efficient than C++ compilers. Okay, because they're dynamically monitoring the code. These JIT compilers, not always. Okay, so hotspot compilers, if you're used to a subset, should be a proper subset of JIT compilers. So a hotspot compiler is a just-in-time compiler, but the opposite can't be said. Not all just-in-time compilers are hotspot compilers. Okay. So now, going back to your question, in C++, you don't need if main doesn't need the command line arguments, you don't need them. So let's just, I think I'm going to get an error message, but we shall see. Oh, it liked it. Answer, yes, you don't have to. And just for your edification, and normally you say args, not argv. So I'm going to pass these to hello world. Then to show you how similar the syntax is, force, it looks just like it. And I'm going to echo out. So dot length gives me the length, or should. So I want to compile it before I promise you that that's what it does. Yeah, it's not liking it. Okay, cannot find symbol, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Lots of blah, blah, blahs. What the heck? What did I do wrong? Int I.
Does not need parentheses?
Maybe, yeah, maybe it will. Maybe I could declare. Anything else I did wrong? Pardon?
I think the length method, is that a method, or is that
I thought that was one of the things I should have checked before I came in. So this is where we Google it and make sure that the length method is what we want. So array length Java. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm pretty sure it's, yeah, array.length. So I'm not messing that one up. I was pretty sure it wasn't. Okay. Public hello. Oh, yeah, I didn't compare. You gotta declare it as an array. Duh. Now it's happy. Okay, so hello world. 1, 2, 3. Prints out 1, 2, 3. So, yep, make sure that you declare your things as arrays. And dot length does give you the length of the array, and it starts at 0. Okay. So, this clunkiness here. Java was not originally designed as a command line language. Java was designed to be used with graphical user interfaces, specifically the World Wide Web. And the idea was that the output would be in the form of a web page, not something at the console. So Java was not designed for console input and output. But what happened was when Java was released, it was the early 1990s, and the business world was slowly waking up to the opportunities with object-oriented languages. But the problem was C++ turned out to be too complicated for most programmers. Okay, things like pointers blew people's minds. And so when Java came out, it was like, oh my gosh, here's something that's C++-like, but it's a lot simpler because as you'll see, Java has a lot of guardrails. It has no explicit pointers. It has garbage collection, so you're not doing memory management. It has a lot of runtime checks. It simplified C++ in many ways. And so when many IT departments saw Java, they said, hey, wait a minute. Yes, it's meant for the World Wide Web, but we could use it instead of C++. And of course, at that time, the developers of Java very quickly realized the opportunity in the market. So then they retrofitted the language with console IO, meaning standard in and standard out. But it's always clunky. It's not as seamless as it is in C and C++. You just got to get used to it, okay? But that's the reason for the clunkiness. Java was not designed as a text-oriented language. Its whole purpose was to be a graphical user interface language. Its output was going to be to a screen, to a web page. Okay, so you're running this virtual machine. This virtual machine is written for different platforms, Windows, Unix, Mac OS, and it has so Java is machine independent, which is great because it will run, the bytecodes will run on any computer. The virtual machine does a lot of runtime checking for you. So the virtual machine, here's some of the things it will do for you. So the Java virtual machine runtime checks. It does array bounds checking. So if you try to index an array out of bounds, it will throw an exception rather than a core dump. It does type checking of downcasts. So it doesn't, if you try to say you have some object, and you'll see that object is this is a generic class in Java. So I have some object O, and I tried to do a downcast to say stack. So I say stack O dot push 10. In C and C++, the compiler will take it as God-given statement that O is of type stack. And it will generate a command to execute it. And if at runtime O is not a stack, it will be a disaster because C++ will take you at your word. The Java compiler will not take you at your word. It will insert a type checking statement into your bytecodes that checks to see whether O really is a stack. And if it's not, it will throw an exception. Okay. It does garbage collection. So you do not have to deallocate memory, which means no dangling pointers. So you do not ever execute a delete command in Java. When there's no longer pointers to an object, it will be automatically garbage collected. Maybe. As you'll see, garbage collection is not perfect. And sometimes pointers do not disappear the way you think they do, which is why sometimes when you have a very long Java running program, all of a sudden it runs out of memory. Because if it turns out if you're not careful with your use of memory in Java, you can go down the tubes very quickly. And I have friends in industry who grew up on C and C++ who bitch and moan to me about Java programmers who can't seem to keep memory under control because they just think, oh, everything I do will get garbage collected. And the answer is not always, because if pointers are out there, it won't get garbage collected. Okay, and then explicit manipulation of pointers is not allowed. So in C++, you can say int star p, and you can say p++. You can't do that in Java. There's no pointer arithmetic that you're allowed to do. So pointer arithmetic, just not there, because you can never get your hands on the Java pointers. They're there, you just can't get your hands on them. So these are 4 types of so-called runtime checks or bounds. There's others, but these things also are what slow things down, just like I'll get you. These are what slow things down. No matter how good a hotspot compiler is, it can't get rid of these checks. So Java programs are less likely to run off the rails, but they're also going to run more slowly in general because no matter how good a hotspot compiler is, it can't get rid of these runtime checks. So there's a trade-off.
I had a question about you.
Give me 1 second. I got a question from the gentleman here in the class, so I'll take your question first. Yes, so in fact, the question is, are pointers useful in Java? And they are. So you still can create a linked list using pointers in Java, and we'll show you how to do it. So there's still the new operator. Okay, so you still have a new operator in Java. Hence, you can get a pointer. It's just, let me just say yes, there's a use for pointers in Java, and then punt it for a moment, okay? Question from Zoom?
Yeah, I had a question about your Hello World program. It's
Let me go back to the Hello World program. Okay.
Probably a dumb question. If you were to dereference args one more time, would you be able to print out the individual characters like you can with C++? Since
so the question is, if I were to dereference it, so let's do this. If I was to dereference the array, could I say I less than args I, whoops, j, can I basically use a string as an array? So can I do this? This is essentially the question you're asking.
Yeah.
So let us give it a try. That is always the most fun thing to do. Yes, I have to declare J, thank you.
I think you're missing a bracket.
Yes, I'm missing a bracket, thank you. I love having lots of eyes on the program. And it is not, yep, you can't. So the error message specifically says array required but string found. So it's not going to let you
So strings
treat
are
a
not treated
string
as
as an
arrays.
array.
Okay.
Other questions? We started, I have to get my times right. We started at 110, we're going to 225, okay. Other questions?
Are
Okay.
strings mutable in Java?
Pardon?
Are strings mutable in Java?
Ah, great question. So the question was, are strings mutable in Java? And the answer is a resounding no. And that is a great way to blow your memory in Java, is to write a program that looks like where you start doing concatenation. You have string A, and then you run a loop for blah, blah, blah. And you start saying A plus equals something. That will blow up your memory because the string is not mutable. So what happens when you do this concatenation is it creates a completely new string and assigns it to A. Now the original string will get garbage collected, but the problem is each time you do this, you're creating a new string from scratch, and the old string gets garbage collected. So this is really important. Good question. So we'll put this in big Java strings are not mutable. Okay, so that brings up the obvious thing of, were they idiots? I mean, clearly you have to mutate strings. So the answer is no, they were not idiots. Let's go to my notes because I never remember the exact name for the classes. If you want to mutate the class, go to my Java basics. Here we go. So if you want to mutate a string, use one of these two classes. So you typically would use string builder in this class because that's faster on single-threaded applications. If you're using concurrent programs, you'd use string buffer. So if you need to mutate a string, declare it as a string builder object, and then you can do in-place mutations on it. Okay. So while we're on the topic of strings, you got to be careful with them in more ways than one. So you don't compare strings using the equal operator. Okay, because Java will do a pointer comparison on them. You have to use the dot equals to do a so-called deep. So you'll often hear this. So this is important because you'll hear it often. You'll hear the word shallow comparison Shallow versus deep comparison. You'll hear this not just in Java, but any language. Shallow means it does a pointer comparison. A deep comparison means it does a value comparison. Generally, when you compare two strings, you want to do a value comparison. Okay, so to show you the distinction, if I say string A equals BVZ, and I say string B equals BVZ, there is a good chance that when I compare them by saying if A equals B, that this will be false, because there's a good chance that the compiler will allocate two instances of BVZ and they'll have a different pointer address. But if I say if A dot equals B, that will be true, because now we're doing a value comparison. It will compare character by character and find that the two are the same. So be really careful with your string comparisons, because the equal operator is doing a pointer comparison. And if you, going back here, if you want to compare less than or greater than, don't use less than or greater than, use compared to, which returns a negative number, a 0, or a positive number, depending on the lexicographic order. Yes, it's a pain in the neck. Get used to it. Questions about that? About the fact that they're immutable? Okay.
Does Java support operator overloading?
Question was, does Java support operator overloading? And the answer is no. So that was one of the specific things that the original designer of Java ranted about, was operator overloading. Felt that it was an abomination. Remember, CS types can get pretty passionate about things, and language wars and flame wars are famous among people who design languages. So he felt that operator overloading was an abomination. He thought that it just, when you look at an operator, you should know immediately what that operator does. And you can use operator overloading in C++ to make the plus operator do things that you would never imagine the plus operator doing. So the answer is no. I just remember him going on a diatribe about operator overloading in particular, and how much he hated it. Other questions? Okay, so we got the environmental issues done. Okay, one more thing before we go. So you're going to have to get used to another thing, that because Java doesn't have explicit pointers, when you pass things to functions, you're going to find something interesting. So you're going to, let me write a swap. Let's see if I have swap. Nope. Let me quickly write swap for you in Java. We're going to do void swap string A, string B. We're going to do a temp, so string temp equals A equals B, B equals A. And we're going to do a public swap. And we'll take, let's not call it, we'll call it swap it, just so that we don't get into naming issues. And we will say string A equals blue, string B equals black. Let's call swap A and B. Out.println.
Dr. Vanderzand, shouldn't the last line for the swap function be b equals temp?
Temp. Thank you. Yep, thank
Also,
you.
I had a question about strings and characters. Is it like Python where it doesn't really matter if you use a single quote or double quote, or is it has to be double quote for strings and it has to be single quote?
The question is, does it matter about single and double quotes? It's the same as C and C++. Single quotes for characters, double quotes for strings.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so string A equals plus A. Okay. Swap A and B. All right, make sure I did the right thing with the print lines. Okay, so I run it. This will be interesting. Does it work? Why? So notice what I named it. Notice the name of the class. Called it swap it, right?
The file's named swap.
But I called this file swap. I'm just curious. Yeah, it's compiled. Interesting. But this doesn't work. And that doesn't work. See what happens when you name your files differently than the name of the class? Java's depending on the name of the class. What Java does is it appends .class to what you do. So when I said Java swap, what the thing went looking for was swap.class. But it knows that while it found swap.class, what was in it was swap it. So that was no good. But then when I tried to run swap it tried to find swapit.class, and there is no swapit.class. So you have to name, you have to be really careful with your naming conventions. So, wait, compile it and run it. Main method not found. What do you mean main method? Wait. Public static void. Surely that's not the. Pardon? No. Then, so it may have been that before. Remember I deleted string args and it worked, or seemingly worked? Maybe it didn't, because all I did was I just added string args and it worked. Okay, so I run it. I know, I'll let you go in a moment. Notice A equals blue, B equals black, right? But that's what I set them to initially, A equals blue and B equals black. Okay, let me check that the swap seemingly worked. By the way, the reason I'm doing this is print line is supposed to print a string and just a string. So I had to, that's why I'm using plus to do concatenation. So don't worry, I'm going to let you out in one moment. So the swap worked, but when you came out of swap, it was unchanged. The problem is Java does pass by value, not by reference. And there's no way you can get Java to pass by reference. So what seems like a very simple operation like swap can't be done in Java through a function because Java doesn't allow reference. You can't pass your arguments by reference. You can only pass them by value. So not having pointers in Java gives you some good things. I'm just pointing out how not being able to do things like reference passing is also going to cause you to grind your teeth at times. Okay, so I'm going to let you go. We'll be picking up on Tuesday with more of these Java basic stuff. Okay, so with that, I will let you all go. Give me one moment because I'm going to stop recording.